Good Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock in time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. Browns getting ready to do joint practices. Won't get underway for another hour. 5 p.m. joint practice in Philadelphia with the Eagles. But they did have a home game over the weekend, Friday night against the Washington Commanders. Lost that 117-15. Deshaun Watson played one series, played pretty well. Watson talked about that performance and also kind of what he's expecting this year.
It was good. I wouldn't say satisfied because we didn't get into the end zone, but that's exactly what the coaching staff wanted us to do: the operation, get the feel of the game, drive it down, and try to get points on the board. Washington did a great job of stopping us once we got down there, but we didn't, of course, show exactly what we would be doing in goal line offense, but they did a good job of stopping us, and wish we could have punched it in. But it was fun to be back outside.
How comfortable are you this year compared to last year?
Way better than last year. There was so much going on last year, and just trying to play catch up and get to know everyone and new system and everything. But having a full off season and being able to lock in with the guys and run the first team offense all the way through has definitely been a help for myself and the confidence to get ready for this season.
You didn't shy from running. You ran 3 times. I think once was a designed run. So is that just instinct that you're going to take off even in a preseason game if you have to?
Yeah, it's just all feel. That's when I get out there, I just feel the game, let the game come to me, don't try to force any plays. And, that's what I did. And, we drove it down towards the one and came up short.
Let's welcome in John Macri from PFF. He is co-host of the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Football Podcast. John, appreciate you joining us. What did you think? What do you expect from Deshaun Watson this year, as well as this Browns offense? It looks like it's going to look a little different.
Yeah, I think it'll look a little different for sure. That would make sense, and I think it's fair to expect a bounce back year from this team. Now, how much of a bounce back that'll end up being, I'm not sure, because it's all going to depend on Deshaun Watson, right? This was a guy that was among the very best quarterbacks in the league when he last played a full season. He ranked 3rd in the NFL in passing grade in 2020 behind guys like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. He was very, very good. Last year, kind of the opposite of that. And to be honest, I think that was to be expected considering the time away from the NFL and going to an entirely new offense. So we'll see if he can ever get back to that kind of top 3 or 90+ passing grade range. But getting back to above league average should at least be a reasonable expectation and starting points with those high-end outcomes within his range of possibilities, especially behind a strong offensive line and with offensive weapons like Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, Elijah Moore, David Njoku, to name a few.
Now, I know you wrote the write-up on Pro Football Focus for the Commanders-Browns game. What were some of your takeaways? And, I thought Watson looked like he was much more comfortable. I think there were times last year where you could tell he was trying to process what was going on, and he was a little slow in doing so, which that's something he usually – his time in Houston, he was really good at that. He was very fast.
Yeah, and look, it was a small sample size, but you're right. I think, we got 3 pass attempts from him, but he completed the throws he needed to make. The most difficult one probably being just a quick out route to Elijah Moore. But I think, like you said, most importantly is that he looked confident in the pocket. I know last season he looked kind of shaky at times, especially last preseason. So I thought it was good to see him more willing to scramble even than what we saw last season, even on that small amount of snaps that he was out there. He had a couple scrambles. One went for a first down, had a designed run in there as well. Last year, we had only seen about 4.5 rushing attempts per game from him. So that's including scrambles, designed runs, and taking out QB Neal. So it was nice to see that aspect of his game come out at a higher rate in this one, even on a small sample. So if he can be a weapon in that kind of way and get back closer to what he was as a passer with the Texans, this could be a very good offense that could make things interesting in a tough AFC.
What was your general, takeaway from that game, though, with the Commanders and the Browns?
Yeah, so there was a few players that kind of stood out for me from our grading standpoints, right? And on offense, I could kind of go through a few of the ones specifically that stood out, at least to me. The first one being quarterback Dorian Thompson Robinson, a fifth-round rookie out of UCLA, I believe it is. But he's been having an awesome preseason already. We saw it in the Hall of Fame game. He was one of the top 5 graded offensive players for the Browns in that game, and then he kept the momentum going this past weekend with the second highest offensive grade on the team with an 88.6, just being super efficient with his passes, going 9 for 12, 102 yards and a touchdown, and hasn't thrown any turnover worthy plays so far this preseason. Showed off ability as a runner as well, picked up a third down with his legs. So really interesting player there that could potentially push for a backup quarterback spot on a team and act as Deshaun Watson if Deshaun Watson isn't in the lineup. And then a couple really interesting players that I thought also stood out. Elijah Moore, new with the team this year, didn't play a ton, but with no Cooper or Chubb, he was kind of the clear focal point of the offense early on. And again, super small sample, no Chubb at Ford in the game, but the backfield touches from Elijah Moore were nice to see. Nice way to get him more involved in the offense and utilize his skill set, manufacture some touches for him, because we know he's a talented player. He just needs that kind of opportunity.
Yeah,
and then sorry, go ahead.
No, so he got banged up, the rib contusion day to day, and then the other one that you were going to talk about is DeJuan Jones.
Yeah, DeJuan Jones, the rookie tackle. I know the Browns' offensive tackle spots are secure with Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills, but thought it was worth pointing out that this is a 4th-round rookie out of Ohio State. He's performed really well so far this preseason. I know he's going up against backups for the most part, but through 2 games has earned an 81.8 pass blocking grade, allowing just one single pressure on 79 pass blocks through 2 games. So really nice to see there. You can never have enough depth at the tackle position, because losing one of those starters like Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills, as you guys know, can be pretty devastating to the offensive line. So nice to see that there could be a capable backup there in DeJuan Jones.
So if we flip to the defensive side of the ball, there's a couple guys that I know you thought played pretty well. Maurice Hurst, that's a guy that if he's healthy, he's been a productive NFL defensive tackle. Take us through what you saw from him.
Yeah, he's always been an interesting talent on the interior of the defensive line, right? And he's kind of bounced around the league a little bit because of injury stuff and inefficiencies, but he's gone from Las Vegas to San Francisco, now here in Cleveland. And I think there's talent here that can help him be a contributor for this Browns defensive line. This past weekend, we saw him earn an 81.6 defensive grade. He posted 3 total pressures and a sack on just 16 pass rush attempts. Personally, I'm a big fan of what the Browns have done to improve their defensive line this year. And I know, interior defensive line wasn't as good as it could have been last year, but upgrades like a Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, Maurice Hurst, I think are stronger additions than what they're getting credit for.
Yeah, and the next guy we're going to talk about is probably happier than anybody with the upgrades. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. When you have the quickness and the speed he does, it shows when you don't have a tackle flying back at you.
Yeah, that definitely helps. And look, we haven't seen Owusu-Koramoah fully take over a full-time role yet in his NFL career. It felt like he might get a chance last year, but then was kind of in and out of the lineup with injuries. But he's a really interesting player for me as someone who fits the modern NFL linebacker mold. It could fly around the field, like you said, making plays. You could line him up anywhere, be solid in run defense, and then not be a liability in coverage. He's consistently shown flashes of that whenever he's been on the field, and this past weekend earned an 81.3 defensive grade. Made a really nice play to snuff out a screen pass for a tackle for loss. And I think, there's obviously injuries to Jacob Phillips you hate to see, but also guys like Anthony Walker and Sione Takitaki still not 100% yet, I believe. So there could be some more opportunity this year in Schwartz's defense, which has typically rotated linebackers off the field less than what the Browns did in 2022. So we could be seeing more JOK this year.
Other defensive guy that you were talking about is Zadarius Smith. What have you seen from him, and how good can that duo of Garrett and Smith be, do you think?
Yeah, speaking of additions to the defensive line, right, and one that just isn't getting enough credit, again, to what they deserve. Smith was one of the best pass rushers in the league last season. He earned an 84.7 pass rush grade, which was 9th among all edge defenders. He posted 78 total pressures, which was 4th among edge defenders, and was just really solid in run defense as well. Clowney, he was solid last season, but I don't know that Myles Garrett will have ever had a running mate on the edge opposite him as good as Smith. So this could be kind of a huge revelation for the Browns pass rush this season if he can keep it going. And I think it's only going to be a good thing for Myles Garrett as well.
Didn't see Nick Chubb at all, one of the starters who didn't play. Might not see him all in the preseason, but what kind of year do you expect from Nick Chubb?
Yeah, this is a guy, I mean, look, I come from a fantasy football background, and he's a player that a lot of people are excited about this year. He's going as the RB5 in drafts right now, which is not something you typically see from a running back who's getting older in the NFL. But this is the highest he's ever been drafted, which is interesting. But I think it speaks to him as a player. This is a guy who's arguably the best running back in the entire NFL, and he's really shown no signs of slowing down. And that's definitely an important thing to kind of keep in mind here for him, because now that Kareem Hunt is gone, being probably the most important things that can lead to his fantasy success, but also how he can contribute on this offense in general. He had previously ceded the large majority of receiving down work to Kareem Hunt the last few seasons, and I think last year's a good example of this, as he played all 17 games but ranked 35th in targets at the running back position last year with just 33. So if he can get an increase in targets as well, we know he's as elusive as they come from the running back position. Just getting the ball in his hands more often is going to create efficiency just because of how good he is. So very excited about Nick Chubb this season.
Yeah, the other thing is he's used to running into 8- and 9-man boxes with 3 wide receivers and spreading the ball out in a mobile quarterback. He's not going to see that as often, and I think he's going to average more yards a carry. I firmly believe that.
I think that's fair. I mean, look, we've seen that kind of thing play out in the NFL already, especially if you look in the same division. Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens consistently creating high yards per carry for their running backs because of the threat of Lamar running the ball. So if Deshaun Watson, like we said, can start running the ball a little bit more and show more confidence there and get back to what he was, it can definitely open things up for Chubb.
John Macri and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we will hear from Eric Mangini. What does he think about the Browns in 2023? Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with John Macri from Pro Football Focus, as well as the co-host of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, former NFL head coach Eric Mangini, on what he sees in the 2023 Browns. This is from The Herd with Colin Cowherd.
They're underrated, and here's why. Deshaun Watson has benefited from the attention that Aaron Rodgers has gotten, the attention that Russell Wilson has gotten. Everybody forgets that he was an elite quarterback. And a few years ago, he was throwing 33 touchdowns and 7 picks. He had a 112 quarterback rating. And the difference between him and those other guys is he's 28 years old. He's in the prime of his career. Now he's moved a year away from all the offseason problems. He's got 6 games in the system. He's got a full offseason with the team. There's so many things that are pointing in the direction of him being able to get back to that form that he was in. And now the Browns added a veteran defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, who I like a lot. They've still got the great offensive line and great offensive line coach, and they've got so many pluses going for them, and they're somewhat under the radar compared to a lot of teams we talk about.
So, John, let me ask you this: how good do you think this roster is? I mean, we've been talking about it, and when you look at it, you're in the second or third, RB3 and defensive tackle 5. You're way down the depth chart when you start going, this is a battle for this position.
Yeah, they got some clear cut stars at a lot of the main positions, right? And obviously Deshaun Watson being the biggest question mark, but could potentially be the biggest star on this team if he can get back to what he was. And then you look at guys like Amari Cooper, who's still performing at a high level at the wide receiver position. He's a great separator, great route runner who could provide an easy target for Watson. David Njoku really kind of emerged late last season as well, and as a strong receiving tight end option. And then, yeah, if we can start to see guys like Elijah Moore get utilized in different ways as well, that offense could be really strong. I love the defense as well. I love what they're doing there with Jim Schwartz. I know there's been some changes at the safety position, Juan Thornhill coming in, but Grant Delpit, I think, could take another step this year. He's a really strong player. They've got some stars at the cornerback position in Denzel Ward. I think Greg Newsome offers a lot of upside as well. But then specifically the defensive line, that's the main one for me. They can generate a pass rush with some of these guys that they brought in. Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, quietly is actually a decent pass rusher as a bigger interior defender, even though he doesn't necessarily put up sacks. He's a guy that can collapse the pocket as well. So some really, really interesting pieces that I think there's a lot of potential there that I think Mangini was right that this team as a whole can surprise a lot of people, and the AFC, as tough as it is, these guys could be pushing for a wild card spot at some point this season. So
this is Pro Football Focus's highest graded edge rushers by season. 2020 it was Khalil Mack 92.5, 2021 Myles Garrett 92.0, 2022 Myles Garrett 92.5. Think about this for a minute. You see that grade. There was, Jadeveon Clowney had a good year and then a not so good year. The defensive tackles struggled mightily. It's almost scary to think of how productive Myles Garrett might be with what they've added in Shelby Harris, Tomlinson, Zadarius Smith. Okunrankwo is another pretty good one.
Yeah, there's some really nice pieces there, and for my money, I'm glad I get to say this here for the Cleveland audience. Myles Garrett is the best edge rusher in the NFL, and I know Micah Parsons and Nick Bosa are kind of the new hotness, but even just looking back at those last 3 years you highlighted, there isn't a single edge who has a collective pass rush grade higher than Garrett since 2020. That's added up to a 94.0, and no one has generated a higher win rate. And even though it's about so much more than sacks, nobody's totaled more sacks off the edge since 2020 either, with 46. Yeah, like you said, he was our highest graded edge defender the last 2 seasons. And I think that helped that he's getting on the defensive line this year. We could see a career high in sack totals from Myles Garrett this season. I know he's posted 16 in back-to-back years. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that he pushes closer to 20 this year. And for my money, a great bet for defensive player of the year finally, because last year he finished 5th in votes. To me, that was an egregious mistake in voting, but maybe I'm just biased. I do believe that Myles Garrett is the best edge defender in the league, but that defensive player of the year, it's only a matter of time.
And the one thing about it, got to stay healthy. Banged up last year, the car flipped. COVID the year before, the suspension the year before. So he's got to get that full season in, and if he does, it could end up being pretty special. All right, before I let you go, we're going to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. Couple thoughts about the game. The Browns need a power back to get the ball over the goal line without Nick Chubb. They're in big trouble. Anthony Schwartz should be done. James Hudson, that was a bunch of baloney, and the press story saying how great he looks. He was absolutely terrible tonight. DTR is, and you heard it first from me, he is the Brock Purdy of the AFC. Watson gets hurt, put in DTR. In fact, I'd make DTR second string. He has such quick processing time and a quick release. Man, I hope he's for real. Ronnie Hickman also looked great. Austin Watson, he looks pretty good, except he can't make the big play in the end zone, so I don't know if he's going to stick. That's my impression of what it's worth. And great show. Thanks a lot. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. John, DTR has looked great. But last year we were saying the same thing about Joshua Dobbs when he was playing. So I would just caution not to get too crazy with the first couple of preseason games. I don't see the Browns getting a power back. Nick Chubb's going to get the goal line carries, I firmly believe, as he should.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Unless something were to happen to Nick Chubb, I know there's, a Leonard Fournette and Ezekiel Elliott. Those guys are available, but as long as Chubb's healthy, I don't think they're bringing those guys in. And yeah, I love the boldness of the call with DTR being this year's Brock Purdy of the AFC. I think that's a lot of fun. But yeah, it's important to remember these are preseason games too. Not all the starters that they're playing against, but for what it's worth, he has looked really good. And if he does, get that QB2 spot behind Watson, could be a lot of fun if he had to get in there.
I agree with you. The best thing I can say about quarterbacks that are young, I want to see more of them, and I want to see more of DTR without question. John McCray, as always, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can get you back on. Thanks very much for your time and insight.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. I'm happy to come back on anytime you guys need me. Really appreciate it. So thank you.
All right, I appreciate it again. John McCree, check him out, PFF, also co-host of the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Browns beat reporter Scott Petrak, Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Browns getting ready for the joint practices with the Eagles. Get underway in about a half hour in Philadelphia. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Do you think at the running back position if Ford's injury is going to linger and hold him down for a couple weeks, miss a few weeks at the start of the season, do they bring in a veteran free agent, maybe a Melvin Gordon or somebody, or do they just continue to bring in young undrafted guys who are just out there or use somebody on their roster to fill that spot? And then when do you think they bring in the competition for Cade York? Can't depend on this kid when you got a team that's ready to win, and you can't count on this kid to make sure to be automatic. I mean, kickers are going to miss every now and again, but this kid just seems to miss more than he makes. Want to hear your opinion. Go Browns.
And the Browns did, in fact, bring in a veteran-ish wide receiver. Jordan Wilkins has some time with the Colts, was part of a three-person rotation there behind Jonathan Taylor. They also signed Nate Meters, who was with the Browns, played on special teams. Jacob Phillips, torn pectoral muscle, done for the year, and they waived safety Bubba Bolden with an injury designation. That's that from Scott Petrick. Let's welcome in Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. Scott, we'll get to Cade York in a minute. The running back, Wilkins, I think it's an interesting signing. It's a guy that's played in the league, has been productive, some when given the opportunity.
Yeah, I think he's different than the guys they have. They have Nick Chubb, and they got a bunch of question marks. Even Jerome Ford, right? He had 8 carries for 12 yards last year. Now the Browns feel like he's going to be the number 2 guy when he's back from that hamstring injury. But he doesn't have NFL experience carrying the ball. Demetric Felton barely has any. John Kelly's most experience came in 2018 with the Rams. So Wilkins has that. I think he's rushed for 1,000 yards in his career. So he gives him a little experience, a little veteran presence, and if Ford is not ready week 1 coming off the hamstring, then they don't have to force Felton or Kelly or undrafted rookie Hassan Hall into that number 2 role.
And they clearly feel comfortable with Jerome Ford. That's why you don't get a veteran. You get a young guy who, has done it a guy like Wilkins. I mean, Wilkins makes sense if you really like Ford.
Yeah, I agree with that, right? If you didn't trust Ford, then you would think about bringing in, a guy that's, maybe doesn't have as much tread on the tires as he used to, but was a good back at some point, right? I think the caller might have mentioned a Melvin Gordon type of guy. I would understand that if you didn't have confidence in Ford, as the backup. But if you do, then you just kind of got to figure out a way to make that number 3 back work and then make the number 2 back work if Ford's not ready for the opener, and they're hoping that he's back for the opener.
So Deshaun Watson played 1 series, looked pretty good. He talked after the game about taking control of this offense this year. Also, what the Browns need to do with the joint practices against the Eagles.
That's the plan. Everyone is giving me the keys, and they are following my lead. So as far as I go, this offense go and this team go. And, the energy, the plays to really just controlling and leading this team is going to go as far as myself. So, I got to make sure I'm prepared each and every moment, each and every opportunity, and I just got to go out there and do what I do and just be myself. And, we showed a glimpse of it at the first drive and got us down, like I said earlier, got us down to the 1, and we just didn't capitalize on that. But, that's something that we're going to continue to work on throughout this preseason and get ready for the real season.
What do you hope to accomplish in Philadelphia?
Just work, just great competition. The Super Bowl runner-ups who is great enough to win it, and they got the whole team back and plus more. So it's going to be awesome to go out there and compete with them and learn from them and, ask knowledge and experience things that they got to experience last year and just kind of continue to grow from there. So last year was good to practice against them, and this year is going to be great too.
Scott, when I watched the series, and again, it's a limited sample size, the processing and the decision-making was significantly quicker. That was the thing that jumped out than it was a year ago to me. What did you take away from it?
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. Everything just looks smoother, right? And he's 3 for 3, no big deal. 12 yards, no big deal. But like you said, he was on target. I think he got rid of the ball quickly, or at least took off, right? He had a couple of scrambles. He kept the ball on one zone read. I thought it was interesting how they used Elijah Moore in the backfield, how they had incorporated a lot of option and zone read looks that I think we're going to see this year that we haven't seen a lot in the past, or at least nearly as much. And he's going to have to make good decisions there too, right? It's whether to keep the ball or get rid of the ball, RPOs, whether to hand it off for throwing. So there's a lot on his plate, and this ties into that first part of the clip, is he's ready to take that on. And I asked him about that at the Greenbrier, about, hey, there's a perception out there that this team is going to go as far as you take them, right? We've talked about that a million times. And he took that on and said, yeah, as good as I am, that's how good this team's going to be. And he kind of doubled down on that after the game Friday. And not only is it the reality, I think it speaks to his confidence level. And he feels like when he talked about not having rust anymore, and that's that was a 2022 conversation, not a 2023 discussion. I think that's just another sign of Watson being confident and ready to take on everything that's going to be required of him this year.
Well, one of the guys who's been the talk of the early part of camp, especially the 2 preseason games, DeJuan Jones, 4th-round pick. Brian Baldinger, former NFL offensive lineman, did a little breakdown. Take a listen and take a look at what he sees with Jones.
The Browns are giving a lot of snaps to DeJuan Jones, and for good reason. He's playing good football, showing awareness of the blitz coming off the edge. All right, so he's seeing things. They just cover up inside. All right? Now, you watch this right here, and you go, this is a twist stunt. End tackle twist. All right, get the back the hell out of the way. He just knocked off his guard. All right, now, they give up a sack here. They can clean that up. No big deal. What you love right here, he's got his left paw is in Cleveland. His right paw is in D.C. Like the guy takes up space. All right, now, right here, his set is just good and consistent. It's just good. Like it's a good punch. All right, good hands, long arms. All right, you love it. Now, you can't do this. Look at the size difference between him and the tight ends. You can't go the wrong way, okay? He knows that. Like you just tell by the reaction after the play and the back taking, dang it. All right, one mental error, that's all you get. But this is patty cake. Like he's good at it, all right? He's going to get a lot of reps. He might be the right tackle before too long.
And Scott, it's really interesting listening to a guy who specializes in offensive line play take a look at a guy like DeJuan Jones.
Yeah, I like Baldy's breakdowns. I really do. Jones has been one of the pleasant surprises to this point in the preseason. You know, the lasting image until that Jets game was him at rookie minicamp vomiting on the field, right? He was so out of shape, he couldn't get through a pretty easy practice. And then he played every snap in that Hall of Fame game, played a bunch of snaps against Washington, and has acquitted himself well. It hasn't been perfect, right? Baldinger showed the one miss, and he got beat once or twice, I think, in that Jets game. But it's been good, and it's been solid. You can't ignore that size. That lets you do so much when you're just that big. I think we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves talking about him being the right tackle. They have Jack Conklin. They signed him to the extension last year. Jones, there's a reason Jones fell to the 4th round when he's got all that talent, right? There's questions about him. I think he needs to prove the work ethic and the consistency. But having said that, there's been a lot of positive signs and a reason to understand why Andrew Berry went and got him in the draft, because he does have a really high ceiling.
Yeah, good first couple of steps towards getting where he wants to go, without question. Another guy that every time you see him play, he does something, is Austin Watkins. Take a look at the numbers so far. 8 receptions, 10 targets, 106 yards, and a touchdown. Last full season in college, that was 2019 at UAB, 19.2 yards per catch, 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. Has played in the USFL and been a little bit productive. That's a guy that he continues to show up when they give him the opportunity. That's the way you find your way into the conversation for the back end of the roster of the practice squad.
Oh, and he's certainly there, right? He's worked himself into that conversation without a doubt. I mean, it's really interesting. You watch some of the career paths that these guys take. Hasn't played, his last full college year was 2019. That's a long time ago, right? Had to play in the USFL. And I think that helped him to play in the USFL. He was sharp when he showed up for training camp at the last minute, right? When Marquise Goodwin had the blood clots, all of a sudden the Browns bring in Austin Watkins Jr. to take that spot, take some of the reps at receiver. But he's been good. He was good kind of from the day he showed up. I remember at the Greenbrier in West Virginia, seeing him make plays down the field and thinking, hey, this guy, he stood out. And then he continues to stand out once you get to the preseason. So It's a good find. I think receiver is a spot where maybe it's just from a media perspective, it's easy to see when these guys make plays as opposed to, an interior lineman, right? It's harder to see those guys stand out. But it feels like every camp you find a receiver that you like, right? You're watching guys, you go, hey, this guy I think might have a future. Last year, I really liked Dalen Baldwin, who played well at the beginning of camp this year and then got hurt. Some people really liked Mike Harley a year ago, right? There's always a receiver or two that kind of catches your attention. And Watkins is a guy this year, and I don't think it's crazy, depending on how you see the receiver position, how many guys they keep. I don't think it's crazy to think that he could land a roster spot.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, Cleveland, from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram and BrownZone.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit about Cade York and head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, love the show. Just a couple things. I want to say I am super impressed with number 80, Watkins. Hopefully he makes the roster spot or even gets on the practice squad, because that kid just plays hard and makes plays. I think it's time that we panic on the kicking game. Not really panic, but Cade York just picking up where he left off, miss after miss. I think it's time they bring in competition for this kid. What do you think, and what's your opinion on the kid? Go Browns. Woo, woo, woo.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, Cade York, that's got to be keeping Kevin Stefanski scratching his head. I guess you got to bring. I guess I'm at the point where you got to bring in some competition. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm torn, Dave. I guess I'm not there yet, and the reason is he's gonna need to miss more kicks before they give up on him. And I don't think having, pick a guy, right? Mason Crosby or Robbie Gould, whoever's out there. If they come in and make a bunch of kicks in training camp, are they going to give them the job? I just don't think it would be a real competition. I think York is going to have to kick himself off of this roster, and it doesn't matter if there's another guy next to him in practice. I mean, they spent a 4th-round pick on him a year ago. If you do that, you would think the guy would have a pretty long leash. And I know he missed 10 kicks last year, 8 field goals and 2 extra points. So maybe that used up a lot of that leash, but I think there's still some there. I'm sure they're working on contingency plans. I'm sure they're thinking about how to handle this. They're monitoring how York's doing from a mental standpoint, right? Is he getting bogged down? Is he getting down on himself for missing these kicks? Or is he just motivated to get better, which strikes me as his personality. But I'm just not sure having a guy next to him kicking is going to do any good.
That's a very valid point. The other thing, I heard a national guy talking, the Vikings, when Kevin Stefanski was there, Mike Zimmer is a guy who notoriously hates kickers. He went through like 4 of them in 6 years. They drafted Daniel Carlson. He lasted like 6 games. They cut him, and Carlson has gone on to be a pretty productive kicker in the NFL. So that might also be kind of in Kevin Stefanski's mind. Just be patient.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. There's 2 kind of ends of the spectrum when you talk about kickers. It's Daniel Carlson, who didn't get a chance to make it in Minnesota, winds up with the Raiders, and I think he's a Pro Bowl guy, right? Becomes a Pro Bowler, and that's because they gave up on him too soon, right? He didn't change. He had it in him. They just didn't give him enough time. And then you got Aguayo with the Buccaneers, who was a 2nd-round pick, and I think they cut him either before the 2nd season or early in the 2nd season because they didn't think he was going to be able to rebound. Now, if you saw that from Cade York, if you saw that vacant look in his eyes, if he was doubting himself heading out there, then yeah, then maybe it's time to move on. But until the Browns get there, I mean, he's got a huge leg, right? We know that. I think all the reasons the Browns took him so high are still valid. He just needs to make more kicks. And I know it's a bottom line business. I get all of it. I get the angst. I just think it's still too soon to give up on it.
Yeah,
I think they think that.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that, but every because of the expectations for the season, every missed kick has me going, oh, come on. I'm pulling for you, kid. Come on, put them through the uprights.
Right. I mean, I completely get that, and it builds on itself, right? I mean, even if he made the next 8 kicks, then he'd miss one, and people go, oh, my gosh, he's back to being who he was. So, like, that's a tough narrative to change, until you're, like I said, Phil Dawson or Robbie Gould or Justin Tucker, where you built up a bunch of collateral. It's a tough position, and to start out, I mean, he made that big kick against Carolina in the opener, but then to miss the kicks as a rookie, you could kind of feel the conversation, at least from a fan perspective, switch. So I get it, but I also think that, you're not bringing in Justin Tucker. So whoever you bring in either might not have as strong a leg or also will miss kicks. And then you get rid of a kicker every time he misses a kick. Like, the Browns have tried to get out of that cycle, and that's why they drafted him. So I don't think they want to rush back into that cycle.
So I know you also you kind of wrote an article, and I'm curious. Take us through this. Normal addition doesn't work for Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith. Take us through that on the defensive line.
Yeah, that was based off a quote from the D-line coach, Ben Bloom. It said 1 + 1 = 3 with those guys working together. It just means, they're force multipliers. So you put them together, and each one makes the other one that much better. It's not just 2 good ends, because when you put them together, it becomes more than that, right? The sum is greater than the parts kind of thing. And we see that from, we will see that. We haven't seen them together in a game yet, but somebody's not going to double, right? You can't double team both of them. So if the offenses decide to put double and triple teams on Myles Garrett like they did so often last year, Zadarius Smith is going to run free on the other side. And he showed what he can do against the Commanders, drawing the holding penalty in the end zone for the safety. And it would be vice versa, right? If some teams say, hey, Smith is killing us, or we don't trust our right tackle, we need to give him help, then Myles should take advantage of one-on-one blocking on the other side. So, and that doesn't even talk about moving Smith inside, and you put Obo Okoronkwo on the end, and you get all 3 guys out there in the nickel package. So just that tandem, if they stay healthy, really should work well together. And, Myles thinks it's the Zadarius. He's never played with a guy kind of coming off the season Zadarius Smith did last year, right? Where he's such a great start in that Defensive Player of the Year discussion. Myles has played with good ends, right? Emmanuel Agba, when Myles was a rookie. And then Olivier Vernon was a solid player. And Clowney played well that first year with Cleveland. But I think it's reasonable to expect Smith to be the best of the bunch.
So I know you had a one-on-one interview with Dalvin Tomlinson. You're working on a profile. Take us through what you found out and what you're going through with that.
Yeah, I'm just giving it a final read, so I'll probably post it tomorrow morning. Really good guy to talk to. And, there's a few layers to it. Number one, his dad died when he was 5. Then his mom died when he was 17. And she had such an impact on him. And he's a big guy in charity, and he spends the charity work he does centers on families dealing with grief of losing a parent. So he talks to these kids about it. He can relate to them. He said, he had a great family support system that helped him get through it, but not everyone does. So if they can look at him, not, let alone a professional athlete, and say, hey, this guy went through the same thing. Look what he's accomplished. Life still does go on, but you have to honor, the loss, the people that you lost. He thinks he can have a real impact on these kids, and he has examples of it. So I thought that was interesting. He's going to get he hopes or plans. He's got the design for a tattoo. He hasn't gone through with it yet, but it's to honor his mom, Melinda, who just had such a big impact. Said she was his biggest fan. He still kind of thinks about her all the time. When something big happens, he really misses her. So I just thought that was an interesting aspect of him. And then he's got all these varied interests. He loves superheroes. He plays musical instruments, a bunch of different ones. He draws. And I said, well, what do you want to talk about? I said, tell me, kind of the passion you're interested in talking about. And he builds PC gaming systems. So, Xbox, PlayStation, those kind of things. He gets his own parts and builds them. And he says they're way faster than the best brands out there. He started doing it in COVID. He's done it 2 or 3 times. I think he said 3 now. And just loves doing it. And he's just a fun guy to talk to. He's got really an infectious laugh, a big smile. And I think he's fit right in along that defensive line.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Again, you're expecting to post that tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow morning it should be up.
Okay. Scott Petrek and I from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrek, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram. You can also check out his stuff on the internet, brownzone.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I think we need to calm down on the DTR hype train. Yes, he has looked like he's the best player on the field versus the 3s and the 4s, and that's what you want to see if he is a good player. But it's only been 2 preseason games, and I'm already seeing some fans saying that he could be Watson's replacement, or we're in an interesting spot because of Watson's contract and the rookie contract of DTR. I mean, we do have a franchise quarterback right in front of us in Watson. He's only 27 years old, and he has not forgotten how to play the game of football. I'm not telling fans how to feel about certain players. That's just what we do. But let's remain focused on number 4 because he's our present and hopefully he's our future. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, last year we were all excited about the way Joshua Dobbs played. So I can't. It's kind of what happens preseason. Backup quarterback plays well. You'd rather see him play well than not play well.
Oh, sure. And, I don't think he was guaranteed that number 3 job when camp started and the preseason began. I expected him to beat out Kellen Mond, but I don't know if it was a guarantee. Mond was, I think, a 3rd-round pick of the Vikings a couple years ago. It's not like he's old. He's got a skill set to him. But after 2 games, it feels like DTR's locked up that spot. So I think it is a positive. He could have led 4 scoring drives in his, 3 quarters of play, but Cade York missed that field goal. So he's handled himself really well. I still need to see him throw the ball more. I know he's thrown touchdown passes the last 2 games. I just mean play in and play out. Is the arm strong enough? Does he make great decisions? I know he's a big-time athlete. That's a given. It's just, okay, can he throw? Can he stand in the pocket consistently? We're talking down the road, right? Can he be that number 2? But, the caller's right. I mean, I don't think anybody in the organization is projecting him as the starter at any time, right? I think it's all about Deshaun Watson. But when the starters aren't playing a bunch, you got to talk about somebody.
Let's go to a couple of things from your mailbag. So do you think Jordan Kunasik has a chance to get serious playing time, even a starting role at linebacker? And have any undrafted free agents stood out for you?
Yeah, it's interesting with Kunasik. He's playing a bunch. He started the other night. He's been with the starters a lot throughout the offseason and then into training camp. And it's tough to tell, though, because Anthony Walker Jr. and Sione Takitaki have only just gotten back to being in team drills, right? They didn't play in the preseason games. So it's not a true depth chart. But, if you're out there running with the ones, even if you bring 2 guys back, then you're still, 4th or 5th on the depth chart. So I think Kunasik makes his team. I think he's a big-time special teamer. I think he gives you the ability to play him at middle linebacker if those other 2 guys don't come back. So, but his playing time will depend on the health and the quality of play, right? Are these guys back to being who they were of Walker and Takitaki? And then when it comes to undrafted rookies, Watkins doesn't fit, but we already talked about him. He's in that under-the-radar group. Ronnie Hickman would be the one that stands out. And I know everybody can point to the 2 interceptions against the Commanders. And yes, that's where you have to start the discussion, right? He went deep and got one at the end of the first half. Then he made another play inside the red zone where he read the quarterback's eyes and cut in front of an in route. A really good play. And I think he's right in that discussion to be that number 4 safety in that battle with DeAnthony Bell. And maybe Bubba Bolden might have been in that competition as well, but now he's out with a hamstring injury. They waived him with that injury designation. So to me, it feels like Hickman or Bell, and Bell was the undrafted rookie a year ago, right? And he's an older guy. Hickman went to Ohio State. So he's a guy that I would keep an eye on. You know, Hassan Hall, the running back, has shown a burst, but, you know, against the Commanders on Friday night was a chance for him to stand out. I think he had 3 yards on 2 carries or 2 yards on 3 carries, lost a fumble. So I kind of feel like he wasted a chance. Now, he probably get a bunch against the Eagles as well because the starters aren't going to play. So I guess we have to see what he does there. But it kind of feels like that's getting away from him, where at the start of camp, I thought he had a legitimate chance to make the team.
All right, before we go to break, some news from around the NFL. It appears that Ezekiel Elliott will be signing a 1-year contract up to $6 million with the New England Patriots. That's from Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissaro. But it looks like Elliott has a home with the Patriots, which it's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't think the Browns were ever looking down that road.
No, I don't think they were either. You know, if you have Nick Chubb and you're paying him a bunch of money, you know, and you have Deshaun Watson, I just don't feel I don't think they feel they need to have a proven backup, right? And we saw that's why they one of the reasons they let Kareem Hunt walk away. But to me, what's interesting there is Elliott with Bill Belichick, right? See how that pairing works out. And then the money. I mean, Zeke was the highest paid running back in the league, I'm pretty sure, at one point. And now for the contract to top out at $6 million, it's not a lot of money. I think Kareem Hunt he was making $6 million the last couple of years. I think he was looking for a raise, and there's no way he's going to get a raise if Zeke's only getting that kind of money.
Yeah, it'll be, and again, it's just a tough market for running backs these days, without question. Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll hear more from Deshaun Watson, talk a little bit about the joint practices. Sports4CLE, will be right back. Stay with us.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Deshaun Watson, talking about does he still have any rust, and the upcoming joint practices?
I'm not thinking about no rust. I mean, that was last year. I missed ball. I played 6 games last year. I had a full off season, so I'm not thinking about no rust. I'm not using no excuses for no rust or anything like that. I got to be ready for this moment. And I'm going to be ready whenever that time is called for September 10th here in the dog pound. And, I'm going to be ready to go. We all will be. So all that rust and all the other stuff, that's left in 2022. I'm focused on 2023 and making sure that I'm ready for September 10th.
Do you feel like in some ways those joint practices against the Eagles are more meaningful than even playing in a preseason game?
Most definitely, because you really get to call everything. You get to see everything, and you get to make those mistakes that in the games that you can't get back. And having 2 great days going against their ones and that talent and their coaching staff is going to be great because we get to see something different. And we also get to see their full package. They get to see our full package and what we need to work on. So it's great on great, and we're looking forward to it, and appreciate Philly for hosting us, and looking forward to going out there and compete.
Scott, he just seems much more comfortable, and in command is just kind of the thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that's dead on, Dave. And it's been a progression, right? I think we started to see it even right after last season. If you remember, the day after, he talked about sitting down with Kevin Stefanski and going over how the offense needed to be changed. Like, I think he felt like once he got past last year and everything that was involved in that, he could put it behind him and move forward. And I think he knows that he's got a lot to prove. And he feels the best way to do it is by being in control, right? He's a Pro Bowl quarterback. He believes he's, if not the best, one of the best in the league. So how do you show it? Put the game in my hands. Let me run. Let me throw. And I feel like his focus is sharper, right? Because he doesn't have the off the field stuff to worry about. And the command of the offense is better. Like all of it. All of it combines to give him that increased confidence level.
So we found out that Elijah Moore will not practice with those rib injury, the banged up ribs. But Greg Newsome will be going, again, coming off that groin injury. Scott, last year at the joint practices you started hearing stuff like, the Dolphins looked sharper. That you heard stuff coming out it was just like, oh, okay. If you start hearing things about, boy, the Browns' defensive line is loaded. Boy, this guy is a load. This guy is really. These are the kinds of things that usually you hear about good teams, is when joint practices are going on with really good teams.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And last year was, I didn't read too much into last year because you had all the Deshaun Watson stuff going on. I think the first day of the joint practices was when the suspension got announced, right? So there's a lot of distractions. You're making the switch to Jacoby Brissett. It was tough to get a great gauge, but you could see the Eagles win some of those one-on-one battles, right? You saw the talent of the Eagles come through and say, okay, this looks like a team that could make a jump this year, which obviously it did, going all the way to the Super Bowl. So I think what's going to be really valuable for the Browns, and you mentioned the defensive line, Philly's got a big-time offensive line. So how does this unit match up, right? How does Garrett, we talked about Garrett and Zadarius Smith and Dalvin Tomlinson and Obo, and Shelby Harris will probably get his first work, and Jordan Elliott, right? Like all those guys up front, how do they match up against a big-time Philly front? Do they get stonewalled or do they make enough plays, right? Like, is it 50-50? Because I think that's probably, ratio that you're looking for. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some against elite talent. And then the same goes for the other lines. With the Browns offensive line, they should be really good. They got all 5 starters back. That Philly defensive front is a veteran group. It's been around. They have the big guys inside like Fletcher Cox. They have Brandon Graham on the outside. Hassan Reddick, right, who had a ton of sacks last year, just flies around the edge. How do Jed Wills and Jack Conklin hold up, right? I think that's a question because the Browns are relying so much on this line to be a strength. Well, you got to prove it against the best fronts in the league.
The other thing is the cornerbacks. When you think about A.J. Brown and some of the guys they're going to be going up against, those one-on-one matchups, you want to hear that the Browns are like you said, 50-50. Because, again, the Eagles are expected to be one of the top teams in the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You got Devontae Smith on the other side. And then you can flip it, right? Elijah Moore has looked great against the Browns in practice. Does he look great against the Eagles? And I think there's reason to think he will, but it's another test for him and for everybody. David Njoku's had a great camp. Does that carry over when you're going against a solid Eagles defense? So I think individually and from a position group standpoint, there's going to be a lot of, it's probably a phrase used too much, but there's going to be a lot of measuring sticks in these next couple of days.
So before I let you go, when we saw the first team defense, especially the line, first couple series against the Commanders, I was looking at that going, that's what I wanted to see. You saw some of the pressure. The other thing you saw is you saw some energy from the sidelines. A defense is supposed to be like that.
Yeah, you're right. And that's why they spent so much money, right? I mean, that was the focus of the offseason. You can look at Elijah Moore on offense, and yeah, that was a big acquisition. But the defensive line, from the early signing of Obo to Tomlinson Maurice Hurst they brought in, Tristan Hill, they draft Ika, they draft Isaiah McGuire, and then they trade for Zadarius Smith. Like that, the most resources were spent on the defensive line. It better show up. And it started to, and then the great news is it started to without Myles Garrett being out there. So you can really imagine the possibilities. And then you add in Jim Schwartz kind of taking they like to say taking the seatbelts off, but also adding in blitzes and pressures that you're not going to see in the preseason.
Scott Petrak, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Steve.
Scott Petrak, make sure you check him out. It's really good stuff. Brownzone.com on the internet. He is also the Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.